So let's take a look at some of the additional functionality available with contains and the other things we just talked about. So the first thing we'll do is, you'll notice we have a div here and it has this text. This is my div text. So let's go ahead and see how easy it is to use contains. So I'm going to come on in and we're going to say, let's go find a div that contains the word and or words even. Let's do my div text, or let's just do my div right in the middle. Alright, so what that'll do is automatically go in, find any div that contains that text, and then return it. Now, what I'm going to do to show that it worked is let's just do an alert around this, and we'll pop up the inner HTML, which in jQuery, as I showed earlier, you can simply do that to make it run. Now, one thing to keep in mind, it is case sensitive. So I know sometimes I've done an uppercase C not thinking about it, and it is a lowercase c, and it does matter. So be aware of that. It's case sensitive. And so, well, that's actually not what I expected. So let's go back to that. And we want div up. And what's wrong? Should have put a colon. Didn't mean to put a dot. So let's go run it again. And there we go. This is my div text. So that works out perfect. So that's how you can use the contains. Now, one of my favorite ones that you can do, and this one's definitely a visual feature that's nice, is let's say that all our rows here, we'd like to highlight those, maybe make them greenish for green bar reports or something, going way back to the old days, and highlight based on some color. Maybe the user clicks a button or something that triggers this, but we'll just do it when it loads. So what I can do is I can come in and we can do a selector for TR, which that would just get all the TRs, and let's go ahead and do that to start. And we'll do CSS like I showed earlier. And let's do green. So if we run that as is, that's going to go in, and you'll see that all my rows are now green. Doesn't look too nice, actually. Well, what if I want just odd or even? Well, as I just showed you, you can come in and say odd, and that'll come in and just highlight the odd rows. Remember, it starts with 0, so 1, 3, and so on and so forth going down. You can see it work down here as well. And it just makes it really nice to highlight, whatever you want to highlight with whatever color. Don't pick the colors I'm using. But it makes it super easy to work with. Likewise, I can do even. And that'll automatically go in and highlight the even rows, 0, 1. You can see those types of things going on. Very useful, and I've used that quite a bit actually to make to either make things more readable, or maybe when they click a button they can highlight it. Maybe by default nothing's highlighted, but at the top of your data you might have a way they can highlight the odd or even rows to make it more readable for them. So that's nice. Now we can also come in and leverage the first child that I showed as well, and that'll come in and just highlight the first child of each table. Now this one's highlighted because there's actually a nested table right there, so that is correct. You can see it's highlighting the first child of each table there, or TR. And then we can even go in and say which table. So let me, instead of doing first child, let's go back to say odd. But you'll notice it was doing both tables. Well, let's come to this table right here. Let's say it had an ID, and we'll just call it data table. Well, using the standard ID selector, we can first tell it select data table, then go find TR, but I only want to find the odd TRs, then highlight with, let's go back to green, a little easier to see. And now the top table should be highlighted, and that's it. You'll notice the bottom table is left alone because we did a filter, and that's a very efficient selector. Anytime you can start something off with either a specific tag, or even faster than that, a specific ID, then that's a great way to go and work with things. Okay, so moving on, we also talked about different attribute selectors, adding a little more flexibility, starts with, ends with, contains, that type of thing. Let's go find a div where the title attribute, and instead of doing equals, let's do ends with, which is $, title, and it is case sensitive. We'll end our bracket, which is kind of like ending our where clause, and then we'll just write out the HTML because that makes it easy to see. So we'll do an alert on that. All right, and let's run it. And you'll see this is my div text, which is correct. If we come back to that div, there's the title. Now, if we change that to a starts with, which is the caret symbol, then obviously we're going to get an entirely different result here because I don't have one that I know of, and you can see we don't. It's null. So we don't have any object to be able to write out. There is no HTML there. Okay, or let's say that we had something like this, and titles just hung in there somewhere. Then we can do the star, which is the contains. And we'll do star equals, run that, and you can see it did match up on the div. Very nice. Now, to this point, I've kind of been using alert a lot because other than showing the HTML function, the CSX function, and the val function, I've tried to focus just on selectors. We'll get into some of these other functions in later modules. I want to keep it focused. But let's do this. If we find a div that has a particular title containing the text title, let's go ahead and set the HTML to a different value. And I'm just going to put updated div value due to title, something like that. So you can certainly go in and update your different code on the fly. I've only used HTML to this point to write it out, and let's face it, you're not going to be doing alerts a lot, popping up HTML, and I realize that. Don't do it myself. But let's go ahead and run this now, and you'll see that there we go. It updated that div live and updated the HTML. And this is nice because if you've worked with inner text versus inner HTML in something like Internet Explorer, which supports both of those, and you also have had to target Chrome or Firefox, you'll know that inner text doesn't work so well across those. In fact, it's only supported out of the box in Internet Explorer. Well, the nice thing about jQuery is that you have one function to know about. So once your selector does its match, then you can go in and either get the HTML or you could go in and update the HTML. And in some of the future modules in this course, I'll show you other ways you can manipulate HTML, such as appending nodes, removing nodes, and things of that nature. So that's an example of some of the extended selector features that are available, and please do keep in mind there's a lot more. If you go to the jQuery documentation, there's even other symbols and other combinations of ways you can do things, but this will give you a solid foundation to help you get started writing jQuery selectors.